Alright, so welcome back, guys. So here in this lesson, we're going to talk about the first section of our dynamic section, that is the releasing of the energy with respect to the vertical direction. So let's just play the timeline. So here you can see that in front of me, the particles are getting, they are getting a rise towards the top vertical direction. So this is the effect which we are looking in this particular lesson. And for that, we have to start generating the blocking. Let me just gonna go to the alpha mode. And here you can see that they are quite detailed and there's a lot of particle count inside this. So without any further ado, let's get started with that one. And here in this case, let me just first go and open the outliner, and with that, I'm gonna select the sword underscore group, and let me just gonna hide that up because this proxy object will going to be releasing all the dynamics for us, okay, at least for this kind of reaction with energies moving in the vertical up directions. So with this mesh, first just start blocking out the fluid part, and then we're gonna start layouting the particles. So the first thing will be the fluids. So we'll go to the fluids and it can start containing the 3D container, and we're not gonna add any emitter to that one. I just don't need the emitter at that moment, so we're gonna apply and close, and we're gonna select the oh we're gonna select the sword mesh, and I can go to the modify snap line objects, go to the line objects and create the apply, so that it can make itself adjust to the perfect. And of course we're also going to need again back, we're going to need the sword group again, so that it would be easier for me to visualize where I have to keep the you know the base of the fluid containers. And let's just go to the top node where we do have the access to the size of the container. So we're going to start off with the 25 with the X, and let's say 25 with the Z. Now for the Y, which is exactly very important to keep it up, we're gonna cover the bigger section of this thing. We're not gonna put that thing just on the top of the sword, and we're also not gonna utilizing the auto resize in that case precisely. So for that, we're gonna push that thing to 80. I think it's quite a big value for that, and I can just put that thing over here because I just want to create something more interesting where you're gonna see that the fluid first will gonna drop down, and then certainly it'll gonna start popping up or rising up. And I think so this is basically the suitable camera angle for that. And I just want to see that the fluids are really moving in the upward directions. These values are not only the confined values. You can start upgrading your values just you know uh, based upon your own artistic decisions. So if someone wants to focus more towards the section, so you are completely free to adjust with that, okay. So I'll just quickly move to the settings of our fluid container. Obviously, at this point of time, guys, the focus is not exactly on the fluids. Basically, the layouting, or you can see the look and feel of the fluids, because here the particles are taking place. So you can say, in terms of the fluids, what's the most important parameter which we are considering in terms of the fluids? And the answer is that it's the velocity grids and the velocity fields, because it's the velocity fields that are making the particles to move and to follow them. So that is one of the most important, you could say, the asset of our course. And this is basically the soul. The velocity fields of the powerful Maya fluid solvers are taking the particles to the next level of the movement or the directions, all right, in a 3D space. So the look and feel of the fluid will not going to matter anymore, because first of all, I'm going to hide up, or you can say I'm going to bring down the transparency of the fluids. So we're not going to see the look and feel of the fluids. Obviously, there are certain parameters like the density and the velocity which are way crucial to control the look and feel and the behavior of the particles. We're going to address them soon. So for this, we're not going to use any of the boundary. Let's say put that to the none. And for the boundary y, we're going to put that into the minus y. Rest x and z are both strictly put that into the none. Okay. And in this case, particularly, we're not going to utilize any auto resize, since auto resize was not giving me, that much kind of, satisfactory results which I was looking. Or you may could say that, after taking a lot of attempts and trials for this particular reaction, I think so 20, not 20, but precisely 15 to 20 attempts in terms of different reaction, different values of the solver, I got to freeze this one, the one that I showed to you in the introductory lesson. So in that case, I came to know that the auto resize isn't, that much necessary to achieve that much, or you can see that not necessary to achieve that precise or particular look and feel of the magical effects onto the particle system. So for that, we're not going to utilize that one, and I'll just start blocking up the value of the dynamic simulations. So the viscosity will going to be 0.1, because we don't want the particles to, blow away, or you can say they start moving in a very random fashion. The viscosity is a very important attribute that we're going to add a little bit more wispiness to the look and feel of the subject. If you remember, recall from our course where we created the wispy smoke, this viscosity is very, very important attribute to control that. And of course, we're going to take a look at the damp, because the reaction is really going to be very aggressive. So the damp is very, very, very important attribute to dip down the velocity vectors per frames. And of course, I'm going to rely myself upon the high detail solve. So we're going to put that into all grids. The steps are required to be approximately 3. With the solver quality, set that thing to the 50, I guess, 50 or 35. Okay. And the simulation rate scale, we're going to put that thing to, I guess, 1 or 1.25, depend upon the play blast of our scene. I think so. I don't were able to recall what exactly the value I used that in my reaction, but I guess it was somewhere around 1.25. And yeah, one more important thing I just came out from the work simulation rate scale is that there should be a consistency or a kind of a space scale maintenance between this reaction and the one that was radially oriented, because the speed and the scale of both two particle systems need to be the same. I mean to say that it shouldn't be like that the radially oriented burst of the particles is moving away fast, and the particles moving from the vertical section of the source are moving pretty much slow. So there should be some proper synchronization between them. All right. Fine, moving ahead, we're not going to utilize the forward advection in that case. So maybe we're going to come back and give a second look to that. But just for now, we're not going to use the forward advection. And the emitting substeps is very, very important, since we are utilizing these substeps. And for that, we don't need any auto resize, so put that thing to the off. For the density sections, just for now only, we need the buoyancy, set that thing to the 5. And again, we're going to use a little high dissipation value. So let's say I must have to put 2 for the start. Guys, all these values are just for the blocking purpose. Just feel free to experiment, explore all of them, but make sure that conceptually you are done with all the sections. All right. We're not going to use the diffusion, density pressures, anything, but yeah, the density tension and tension force are really, very important. These two parameters are essential for achieving a look of the wispy kind of a thing. Okay, so density tension and the tension forces. We're gonna, you can say, put some more stretch inside the reaction of the fluids. So 0.5 and 0.5 would be the good start, and feel free to tweak these values, particularly the density tension and the tension force. Again, followed by the gradient force, we're going to put that thing to the 35, and we're going to share all those important attributes live in front of you. Okay, so just don't feel a little bit bored about that we are just discussing the attributes. We're going to have a detailed discussion in the upcoming lesson regarding each and every single tweak. Okay, so just don't worry. This is just the blocking part. All right. And precisely for the velocity, this attribute, the swirl, is one of the most crucial and important attribute for the whole of this reaction. This, I could say, the soul of our course. Swirl is such an important attribute, guys. You're soon gonna realize that if we're not gonna put that thing to approximately 3 to the 5 or to the 6 value, the particle will completely go into the straight fashion. So while creating this effect, the swirl is the most important attribute, I must have to say. And put that thing to the 5. All right. And of course, I know that once I'm going to play the timeline, reaction will going to happen. But we don't have any emitter in that case, I do acknowledge. But as I told you that we are not bothered about the movement of the behavior of the fluid at this point of time. So we can put the transparency to completely, one. We don't want the visibility of the fluid to distract us. And of course, we don't need to take care of any of these opacity. Just for your safer side, you can put that thing to the down. Since you have already put the transparency to the one, so there isn't any need for that. And we're not going to use any self illuminations, and we're also not going to use any, in case there could be some kind of error, just to avoid that, because you're going to utilize some ray trace shadows, and also we're not going to utilize this attribute as well. So we're going to put that thing to the stop, and I think so in this reaction particularly, we are using just only density and the velocity grids. We're not going to use any of the turbulence or the temperatures. However, I do acknowledge that adding a little bit of the turbulence to the effect could give some more nice subtlety, but we're going to address that a little bit later. So I think for this course, at least for this lesson, we are done with this one. We're going to move to the next lesson to see the progress, and we're going to add a fluid emitter and as well as the particle source to that. All right. So now let's move to the next lesson.